Welcome to the Calvary Church Podcast, where we strive to lead people into an overflowing life with Jesus. Join us as we explore inspiring messages, engaging stories, and thought-provoking conversations that uplift your spirit and deepen your faith. Whether you're at home, on the go, or anywhere in between, we're glad you're here. Let's dive in.
One of the things that we often find ourselves is in these places where we are doing the right things, but maybe for the wrong reasons. I don't know if you've been there. You're doing the right things for the wrong reasons, and it's an easy mistake to make, but let's be clear, it is a mistake. You see, living the life we were created for, following Jesus, isn't simply about doing the right things, because we've been talking about this entire month. We aren't defined simply by what we do. Our identity is in who we're becoming, not just what we're doing. And one of the easiest ways we can get distracted from what we're becoming is when we start thinking life is simply about doing the right things, that we're defined by simply what we do. This past week, I posted on social media this question: what are some of the most common ways people end up doing the right thing but for the wrong reasons? And I had a few responses. Here's some of the top responses I'll share with you. One, serving to put yourself in the spotlight. The look at everything I did mentality. Or this one, fear of consequences. This is a funny one, I'm not going to murder that dude because I don't want to go to prison. Instead of, I'm not going to murder that dude because it's wrong. Easy. Or this one, enabling others to do destructive behavior simply because we love them. That's not a good one. Or saying sorry because it feels right and not actually being sorry. Or on the other hand, extending forgiveness, saying things are fine, all right, or forgiven when you really are harboring that resentment and anger still. And the last one, we have more of a take than give mindset. We give to get. We worship to feel something rather than to give something. We pray to get something rather than to connect with someone. And these are all ways that we find ourselves maybe doing the right things and trying to do the right things, but maybe for the wrong reasons. Over the course of church history, we have too often equated our spiritual health, the progress we make, with the things we do. And it's easy to do because we can measure them, we can see them. And if you raise your hands at the right times, if you say the right things, if you're just reading the Bible the right amount, then you're a healthy person. But that's not necessarily what our faith is defined by. And the truth is, these can be really good, important questions that we ask about, am I praying the right prayers? Do I read the Bible enough? Am I giving enough or serving enough? And they're important. But an even more important question to ask is, what are we becoming as we do those things? Now, today, of course, Father's Day, it's this important day, a lot like Mother's Day, where we honor and celebrate the men who have impacted, shaped our lives. And for those of you who are parents, if we're not careful, we can be the right parent, but for all the wrong reasons. Cheering for your kid and to succeed at sports is really good. It's super healthy, except when you're doing so just to fulfill some unrealized dream you had for sports in your own life. Or wanting your kids to do well at school and get good grades is a wonderful, great thing. But doing so just so you can show off your kids to your friends and how smart they are isn't really the right reason. Or speaking well of your kids when the instant reel is running is one thing, but then treating them like garbage when no one's watching is simply dangerous. You see, there are so many ways that we can do the right things, which is really good. We want to do the right things. But when we do it for the wrong reasons or with the wrong motive, what we're doing, why we're doing something, changes what we're becoming. And this is a simple thought, just in the brief few moments we have together I want to share with you. It's this: why you do determines what you're walking to. Why you do determines what you're walking to. And you can fill in the blank. Why you do anything, you fill in the blank, determines what you're walking to. Not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it. The motive, the heart behind it. Now, this month as we walk through this story in Luke chapter 10 of Jesus' visit to the home of these two sisters, Mary and Martha, this is the very principle that was played out right in front of us. And we're going to jump into Luke chapter 10, verse 38. We've been reading. Here's what it says. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to them. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. Verse 40. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." Now, before we start railing against Martha here, it's important to ask, why was she so busy with all these preparations? What compelled her to do that? Well, to understand, you need to understand a core value of Jewish culture, which is the importance of hospitality. The Jewish Talmud, which is essentially the Old Testament with some rabbinic writings that are added to it, says this, that welcoming guests is greater than welcoming the divine presence or the Shekinah. So hospitality, which was known as haknusat orhim, which is the Hebrew for it, what it means literally is considered one of the most important Jewish values. We see it exercised by Abraham in Genesis 18 as he welcomed travelers into his home. We see it throughout Jewish history as residents of Jerusalem would welcome guests who would travel from all over the world for their pilgrimage for the different Jewish feasts into Jerusalem. It's a staple of Jewish teaching and customs. And so when you see Martha working hard to extend hospitality to Jesus as a guest to her home, she's doing exactly what she should do and even was taught to do. This was a Jewish custom. This is what she was doing. This is what she was taught to do. So when she does this, it's not that she's doing something wrong. She's actually doing exactly the right thing. And Martha's faithfully exercising haknusat orhim, this Jewish hospitality. But now she's irritated that her work is going unnoticed. Her sister Mary is slacking and just sitting there listening to Jesus. Maybe you've been there before where you're working your butt off and it seems like everyone else is just taking it for granted and they're just sitting there with their feet kicked back and just enjoying the moment while you're exhausted, sweating, working hard. This is where Martha was. And this tension is what we want to pay attention to today, zoom in on. Why was Martha so irritated in this moment? What was it? Well, there are a few things in our lives more damaging to our journey of faith than trying to work for Christ, which Martha was doing, without taking time to commune with Christ, which Mary was doing. One of the greatest ways your faith will be shaped is through what we do for Jesus. But when the things you do for Jesus, whether it's serving the poor or serving here at church, but do so without Jesus, we become no better than the Pharisees were in the New Testament. We become what Paul cautioned against in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 5. He said, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. You see, the trap that followers of Jesus have been falling into for the past 2,000 years is we become really good at doing the right things. We're really good doers, but we fail to forget that we're actually called to be, not to do. That we're defined by our being, not our doing. Jesus spoke about the importance of recognizing this heart, that the heart that we should serve from. In John's gospel, in chapter 15, verse 5, he said this, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Listen to this. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Can we say that phrase one time real quick, that last part? It says, apart from me, you can do nothing. That's a really bold statement to make, isn't it? What's he saying? Like, sure, there are plenty of people around the world that do things apart from Jesus. But he's talking about actual, meaningful, lasting fruit. That if we're not abiding in him, if our heart isn't inclined to him, then what we're doing is simply for our benefit, not for an eternal benefit. In this story, Martha wasn't doing anything bad. Like, she wasn't committing a crime or doing something to harm people. Quite the contrary, she was doing something to help. But she was missing the bigger point of why Jesus was there. He wasn't there to be served. He was there to be heard. Her why and her what became misaligned. And when these things get misaligned in any area of our lives, whether it's serving, whether it's as a parent or even with our job, we start emptying our tank, so to speak, without recognizing that we're running on empty. And dangerous things can happen. We start falling prey to something that has more recently been referred to as burnout. Now, this has become a buzzword, but let me be clear about something real quick. Work is hard and life is hard. Jesus doesn't call us to do the easy things. He calls us to do the hard things. Followers of Jesus aren't wimpy, lazy pushovers that don't feel it necessary to lift a finger, that we only do the things that make us fulfilled. That's not what it means. No, we do the difficult things, the things that require sacrifice. We should be the first ones to step up when things get hard. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do uncomfortable things or that our sense of worth or fulfillment should drive everything we do. What I am saying is that burnout can be deadly to our journey of faith, and it is a very, very real thing. When our why and our what are not aligned, we will soon run out of gas, and rather than be a blessing to the world around us becomes a frustration to us. In fact, listen to these 12 phases of burnout. 12 phases of burnout. And think about this story of Mary and Martha. Think about your own life. These 12 phases of burnout. The first phase is an urgent need to prove yourself. In the earliest phase of burnout, you want to do well to the point of perfectionism for fear of not fulfilling demands. Think about Martha in that moment. She wants to prove herself. 2, working harder. You feel the need to do everything yourself and complete tasks as soon as possible. Jesus, do you see how much I'm working? I'm trying to get this all done. 3, neglecting your needs. You think the stress of work or activities, like caring for others, is normal. You neglect your social life and look down on others who pursue one. You begin to make small mistakes. Jesus, do you see that Martha, she's taking time for you, but I've got work to do. I'm sacrificing here. I'm exhausting myself, and no one pays attention. 4, more interpersonal conflicts. You have conflicts with coworkers, friends, or your partner. You don't sleep well, have other physical complaints, or become forgetful. In this situation, Martha has just created a whole conflict with her sister because of what she's doing. Number 5, revision of values. You see things differently and begin to seem insensitive to others around you. Friends and family become secondary to your goals. 6, denial, bitterness, and cynicism creep in. And you begin to cut yourself off from others, becoming impatient, intolerant, and angry. Your performance suffers, and you feel physical discomfort. Does this hit home for anyone today? 7, withdrawal. Dealing with others feels like a burden. You get angry if someone criticizes you. You may feel disoriented or helpless. 8, behavioral changes. Apathy sets in, and nothing matters. You avoid any additional responsibility. 9, depersonalization. And this is one of the big game changers. You lose your sense of identity. You start seeing yourself only as the vessel through which work and responsibilities are complete, almost like your machine. Your life feels meaningless, and you begin to neglect your own physical health. 10, feeling empty. You're exhausted, anxious. Panic starts to set in. 11, despair. You may have feelings of self-hatred. You could even at this stage, this phase, sometimes start to have thoughts about suicide. 12, total burnout. This last phase of mental and emotional collapse always requires immediate care. And when you think about these in light of the story of Mary and Martha, like Martha was on track toward burnout. And that's not just some clinical thing. There's a real spiritual impact to that. She's following a Jewish customs of hospitality that is at the core of the teachings she was raised with, right? She's doing exactly what was expected of her and would have been the norm in her culture. This is important to note because just because something is a norm or a custom doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy or right. Just because, that's what everyone is doing doesn't necessarily make it right, doesn't even make it healthy. So why does this matter at all? Because the value that a person brings to this world quickly diminishes when their why and their what are misaligned. When why we're doing something and what we're doing aren't aligned. Because why you do determines what you're walking to. If you can't evaluate why you're doing something, you're going to be in for a real surprise when you find out what you're walking to. You see, when we begin criticizing others and pitying ourselves because we feel overworked, it's often a caution light that is flashing on the dashboard of our lives. Maybe in the midst of our busyness, we've been ignoring the voice of Jesus in our lives. We've been so focused on trying to get everything done, trying to be a good employee, a good parent, a good person, that we've forgotten what Jesus is saying about our lives. That we're not defined by all of this. We're defined by who he says we are. Martha was literally in the same home as Jesus himself, and she got distracted. And if she could do it, I would guess we probably could as well. See, Martha's problem wasn't that she had too much work to do, but that she allowed her work to distract her and pull her from what was really most important in that moment. She was trying to serve two masters. Have you ever found yourself trying to serve two masters? It's impossible. You can't. I don't know if you've ever had two people in your workplace trying to be your boss. Maybe you've been fortunate enough to be in a position where you actually have two bosses. And it's exhausting, right? It's chaotic. You're trying to please two people. It's not possible to do. You can only please, how I've heard it say, you can only please a me, you can't please a we. Like, two people are going to have things, see things very differently. What Martha's doing here, she's trying to serve two masters. And let's be honest, if serving Jesus makes us difficult to live with, then something is terribly wrong with how we're serving. Just to, hopefully it's not stepping on too many toes. Let me circle back to the story again. Martha is doing something incredibly valuable. She's serving her guests. That's not a bad thing at all. She's practicing this Jewish value of haknusat orhim, this Jewish hospitality. This is a good thing. But listen to verse 40 again. It says, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister left me to do all this work by myself? Tell her to help me. She's irritated because she has all this work to do. She's exhausted. Where things go wrong here in Martha's life is she lost sight of why she's doing what she's doing. Why is she doing it at all? Is it just to get it done? Is it just to fulfill? Is it to check off things on her list? Or is it really to welcome Jesus? We talked about a couple weeks ago, Martha's the one that opened the door and welcomed Jesus into the house. Why did she welcome him into the house? Just so she could do work? Just so she could have things to do? Why do you do what you do? See, our faith is shaped by what we do. Followers of Jesus are meant to do work. You know, I would hope that everyone here has a place where you can serve. Whether that's at Calvary, whether it's outside of our church, that you have a place to serve. Because followers of Jesus aren't meant to be sideline observers. We should be in the game. Christianity is a participatory sport, not one you simply observe from the sidelines. As the worship team comes today, this means that our faith is shaped, our faith grows, and our faith is strengthened when we serve. But when we forget why we're serving, the very thing that should be strengthening us could ultimately destroy us. And maybe for you, man, serving in Calvary Kids is something that is so valuable. Maybe it's being a greeter. Maybe it's serving on your kids' sports team or your kids' dance team. Like, those are really important things to do. But if you've forgotten why, it will destroy you. Because that why and what become misaligned. Why you do determines what you're walking to. So here's my question for you today. Here's my question. Look at the most draining parts of your week, like the most exhausting parts of your week. What are the things on your schedule that you dread, that exhaust you? The things that you absolutely hate. Pay attention to the tension inside you. Pay attention to the gauges. Why do you hate that? Why do you dread it? What are the things in your schedule that drain you? When you look at those things, here's the first question. Have you talked to Jesus about them? What is Jesus' voice about those things? What is his voice about those things? What is the why that first led you to them? Whatever it might be. Maybe it's your job, your career. Maybe it's something you're volunteering for. Why did you start doing that in the first place? Maybe you need to recalibrate your what and why, because you're doing something you're giving out of yourself, which is good. It's healthy. It's Jesus-like. Jesus poured out his life for us. But he understood why. When he hung on that cross, he wasn't just hanging on this cross because it was an obligation. And when something just becomes an obligation, you've forgotten why. What is the why that first led you to those things? What does Jesus have to say about it? And then lastly, what changes need to happen to allow what Jesus says about those things to be aligned with what you're doing? what do you need to change to make sure that why you're doing something is aligned with what you're doing? Is life always going to be perfect where you are just sold out, passionate about everything you do? No, not at all. But when you start paying attention to that, you start to walk through those phases of burnout. And I know that's a clinical list. We're not just talking about clinical. I'm talking about your heart, how you and Jesus are doing. You find yourself on the path that Martha was going on, where you get irritated and agitated about good things, because you've forgotten, why is Jesus even there? Jesus wasn't there to eat a meal. Jesus wasn't there just to be a friend, although he was those things. Jesus was there to be with them. And in Martha's effort to be hospitable, she forgot why. Why do you do what you do?
Thank you for joining us today on the Calvary Church Podcast. We hope you found encouragement and inspiration in today's message. Remember, you are not alone on your faith journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. For more information about our church, upcoming events, and ways to get involved, visit our website at calvaryirwin.com or follow us on social media at Calvary Irwin. Until next time, may God bless you and keep you. Have a wonderful week.